All right, here we go. It is Wednesday night. I am Matt. This is Why Libertarian. If you are new to the program, we talk liberty. So it's going to be a good time. Definitely, as usual, like, comment, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, retweet, and follow me or check out all my links on Linktree. You will find me. We're streaming on a couple of blockchains right now on Odyssey, on the Library blockchain, and also streaming on VimTV on the Hive blockchain. So check me out there, upvote my stuff. That is the only way I am monetized right now. I do not take a penny from the big tech companies that are part of Web 2.0. So definitely help me out there, throw me a follow, whatever you can do for me. I am going to be very, very quick this evening to introduce my guest because he is out on the road. He needs to get back out on the road in order to finish making him some money. So I am joined by Tommy Salmons this evening. Tommy, how's it going, brother?
What's going on, man?
I want to thank you. You were set to be here last week, but you were in the middle of a run then, and we couldn't pull you away. So I'm glad that we were able to link up this time.
Yeah, it gets a little crazy out here sometimes.
Yeah, all good, all good. So anyone who's not familiar with you, give them the Reader's Digest version. Who are you?
I'm the host of Year Zero. I found at the Libertarian Institute. I also have a Substack, TommySalmons.com. For the most part, I'm just some fucking blue collar coon ass out here trying to make a living and trying to spread the word for liberty, man. Just trying to figure out ways where people can find liberty in their life, through agorism or whatever else, and kind of avoid politics in general. And, but it's not always easy, Politics is a team sport. So.
Yeah, well, we need more of that in the world. I think one thing that has become painfully evident is that if we rely on too many of these kind of aristocratic type people to provide that for us or to give us the solutions, we get the exact opposite, right? So I think the answer is we have to kind of do it for ourselves, otherwise, lest we don't get any liberty. So that being said, you had mentioned it last week. We were talking. I had Sal, I had Jose on, I had Drew, the Clean Libertarian. We were talking, agorism versus politics versus culture. Where do you kind of fit on that spectrum? Like, are you political? Are you more on the pure agorist kind of decentralize everything standpoint? What's your persuasion?
Well, my ultimate goal would be to decentralize everything. I live my life as an agorist. When I'm home, I'm gardening and I'm tending to chickens, and I have a stocked pond, and so I do a lot of my stuff on my own. But my entire perspective is that there are people that love liberty that will defend and normalize agorism. And none of those people are in office right now. And they're not the ones that the normies are going to be voting for. So if you leave those people to their own devices, people like me or Sal or whoever are going to end up in a Ruby Ridge or a Waco situation. We're going to end up at like a Ross Ulbricht. That's going to happen to us because we're trying to live a free life in, as Harry Brown put it, unfree world. And so the way I look at it is you have to permeate culture for sure. Problem is right now, politics is culture. Like politics is just a sport. It's entertainment for everybody. And as ridiculous as it is, and as much as I hate talking politics, I'd much rather talk history, what you can learn from history, what you can do for yourself. But it's invaded everything. You can't talk philosophy without being accused of being political. You can't talk history without being accused of being political. It's just invaded every aspect of our lives, thanks to, the Marxist roots and the left pushing this as politics is everything. Everything is political. So you can't do anything. You can't without politics invading in your life in some way, shape, or form. So those people that are willing to take on the political establishment through political methods, I just don't. I think they're actually, getting involved in culture by proxy, just because that's where the culture is right now.
Yeah. Well, so when you mention, politics, it sounds like you're kind of saying, all right, we need to play defense at least, right? Like try and stem the tide of this, kind of like authoritarian, just march that has happened for some time now. Is that right? Or do you think that we also need to politically go on the offense?
Well, no, harm reduction is a huge point of the political action for libertarians in general. But I think, start repealing some of this bullshit. Even if you can only do it at a local level. I live in a small town, and it's crazy because I got in a conversation with a bunch of people in the town I live in last weekend, and they wanted to have the government stop small businesses from opening so that they could get a Walmart to move into the small town. So instead of driving 10 or 15 minutes to the Walmart that exists in the town next door, they can only drive 2 minutes to a Walmart right there in the middle of this small town. And I'm like, this is fucking bullshit. You know, like it's everything like it. And these are mainly Republicans, conservatives, because I live in Southeast Texas, in a really small town in Texas. And so even the Republicans are coming after the small businesses and trying to stop us from living in a laissez-faire society. So you almost have to push back against that in an offensive way and get angry and say, no, this is not freedom. This is not what freedom is. This is not what I was promised, growing up in this godforsaken country.
Yeah. No. So, from that standpoint, is it? That's interesting to hear that's something that's happening in Texas, right? I think so. I'm in New Jersey. It doesn't get too much more socialist than New Jersey, New York, or California, right? Maybe some parts around Seattle and Portland. But that being said, I think a lot of people look to Texas and they're like, oh, Texas is free. Like that's where cowboys are at, and basically it's like live and let live. But it sounds like it's even infecting the states that we think were these kind of like bastions of freedom and liberty.
Yeah, it depends on what your definition of freedom is, I guess.
That's true.
These guys, they're all about limiting immigration, and they're things of that nature. They're not for unabridged freedom. They want the government to stand in the way of certain things. So it's always the conservatives who are continuing to support the police and support the war on drugs. There's a reason that marijuana isn't legal in Texas. It's so freedom as far as fewer regulations on businesses, maybe no state income tax, lower property taxes, things of that nature. Yeah, to a degree, but it's not free.
Yeah. No, and I think a lot of people just make that assumption, and they never even hear about that flip side of it. They think like Texas is the Wild West, right? And that anything goes. I don't think most people understand. Like, does it look like constitutional carry is going to pass there? I've heard a couple of people say that it might actually time out in terms of passing in the state of Texas.
I thought it had already passed. I thought we were just waiting on old rollerball to sign it. But I don't know. I don't really pay much attention to that. I've been paying a lot more attention to Texit than I have that. And there's a really big push for Texit to hit as a referendum for the voters of Texas to vote on. So this is another thing, as I'm saying, even as an agorist, I'm watching this and I'm going, okay, well, if that referendum pops up, I might register to vote and go vote on it. I mean, why not? What's it going to hurt? So, I mean, they took a poll in Corpus Christi, and it was something like 60% of the people that responded to the poll were for Texas secession. So, I mean, there is this impending threat that this referendum will actually go through the state legislature and make it to the voters this coming November.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, because I'm not sure if like someone like Spooner entertain that, or at least I haven't necessarily kind of delved into his entire work, collected works. Right. But like that idea where I think he was okay to an extent with like defensive voting. I guess you could portray that, right? Secession is kind of like a defensive move to remove yourself from essentially an aggressive state apparatus. Right. No, that's incredible. I mean, look, even if it passes and it then at least forces the conversation, that's better than the shit that's going on now, which is essentially just top down, like, they just feed you the boot a piece at a time. Like it's not even, they're not even they're not even covering it up anymore. I mean, it's just completely blatant from the top down. I mean, it sounds like you're not too impressed by the governor either.
No, I'm not a big fan of Abbott. I mean, he's like any other conservative. He pays a lot of lip service to freedom, to liberty, to individual rights. I mean, he'll come out like every couple of years and he'll be like, we need to lower these property taxes because the people of Texas don't rent their property from the government. He'll say things like that. But I mean, it doesn't change anything. Property taxes will drop, like a couple of percent every few years, but they're not making any real drastic changes. All he's trying to do is get his base fired up to fight back against the amount of Democrats that have been moving into Texas here recently, because he doesn't want to lose his position. Yeah.
What's the effect been on the trucking industry for you down there? Has it been, I mean, like, has business still been decent for you? Or, because, I mean, like, the story I'm hearing about, like, say, the lumber prices isn't necessarily production. It's being able to get the material through the system, basically the supply chain. Are you guys going like crazy right now, or is it something where you're still kind of feeling the effects?
I haven't noticed anything. I've been rolling smooth. I mean, even last year, I didn't have any issues. I never stopped running. I've been running anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000 miles every week and nonstop.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. It's like certain industries were completely decimated, but to your point, like, it really seems to be the mom and pops that have taken the brunt of it, right? Like, it's definitely not the big companies, that's for sure. I think some of the medium-sized companies, probably the reason why the PPP passed was to keep them alive, just so the economy didn't fall in on itself. But it really seems like most of the mom and pops have been who took it on the chin during this entire thing. It's kind of like just theft under a different name, like it's
Yeah.
or a different machination.
Yeah.
But
Well,
what
my dad works in the lumber industry, and
yeah.
he was telling me a couple of weeks ago he went to pick up some 1 1/8 tongue and groove OSB plywood for a little project he's doing at the house, and he bought 4 sheets at $82 a sheet, and the next week he went to go get 4 more sheets. The price had gone up to over $90, and there was none in stock. So, I mean, there is an issue, but the problem is, like, you even talk to him, I might be going to work for the company he works for because they can't find drivers to deliver all the material. So even though they have a shortage of material, they're short on everything. There's an increase in orders.
That's incredible. Yeah, that's like, and so you're saying like that they don't have any drivers available, or do you think it's a dynamic where people are making money on unemployment still and they're just not showing up to work?
Well, a lot of the problem with the drivers, and I've mentioned this before, my buddy Gord McGill, he talks a lot about this, but a lot of the issue with the drivers is that people like me who have been driving, I started driving in 2003, so I've been driving 18 years. So people like me have been driving for 18 years. We're still making the same amount of money we were making 18 years ago. So I've made between $48,000 and $58,000 a year for the last 18 years. That's what I've made, and that's all I'll make driving truck. A lot of us get tired of it, and we just leave. We just leave the industry. We find other things to do. Yeah. I'm trying to leave the industry by moving and going local, like what I'm trying to do. It's one step closer to me, working from home full time. It'll give me more time at home to tend to things at home and start my side hustle to move me into a position where I'm not out on the road at all, because I'm tired of it. Like I said, I mean, you can only watch inflation grow 2% every year while your income stays the same for so long.
Yeah. And why is it, in your estimation, that the wages stay stagnant? Is it just the squeeze on the profitability of the operations, or is there something else at play there?
Government subsidies. They're cranking out billions of dollars to these trucking companies, these large scale trucking companies, to send drivers to school. And so just anybody can, if you can hold a steering wheel, you can drive a truck nowadays, basically. There's really very little drivers out on the road that are skilled drivers that have been driving for a long time, that have the skills to maneuver and make the right decisions. They have all these computers all over the damn truck that tell you when you're within a certain amount of feet of another truck or another car. Like, there's all kinds of shit, automatic speed reduction, all kinds of shit going on in these trucks. And they're moving into the direction of AI. Yeah. They really are. I mean, and this has been going on for quite a while now. And so as they're able to just continue to hire and hire and hire and hire constantly, if I go to my terminal there near Dallas, I mean, any day during the week, there's a new school of drivers coming through, just boom, boom. And you're talking 6 to 8 new hires every week. They're just rolling them through. They don't care to pay us anything to keep us on board, because they can have 8 guys right back in the door next week.
Yeah. What's interesting is that sounds exactly like what's happening or has happened to airline pilots, right? Highly regulated, but also highly subsidized transportation industry. And I think there were stories of, airline pilots that were on food stamps part of the year based off of, how much they were or weren't making. And it sounds like, I think a lot of people, I work in the insurance industry, so a lot of people, wax philosophical about, like, when the self-driving trucks are essentially going to be, the bulk of the fleet for, the supply chain and the trucking industry. it sounds like, and I'm not saying that this change wouldn't ever happen, but it sounds like the government is essentially taking the truck drivers and throwing them off of a cliff way earlier than would have happened if the market had actually played out the way it would.
Yeah, I mean, by forcing, thousands of kids, young kids through trucking school at 21 years old, cutting them loose 3 weeks later to go drive on the road, what they're essentially doing is they're just pushing the skilled drivers out, and the as the more unskilled drivers come in, the less skill you need to operate one of these trucks becomes, right? And so they're just weeding us out. Back in the 90s, you could have made $70,000 for a company like Crete, which is who I work for. Like, you're not going to make that kind of money for any of these big companies anymore. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do. You get on with a small independent company, you can make pretty decent money.
Yeah.
But it's just, all the skilled drivers want to do that. So then it's about finding that position. And when you hear about these driver shortages and shit like that, they're talking about Crete and Swift and Schneider and the big corporations. They're not talking about, Jim Bob's down the road that has 6 trucks. That's not who they're talking about. They're talking about, thousand truck fleets.
Yeah. What does the side hustle look like? What are you gonna what are you working on, if you're at liberty to say?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll talk a little bit about what I'm doing. Well, like I said, I'm raising chickens, so I mean, there's going to be a lot of eggs and meat for sale. I'll be getting me some goats here later this year. I'm also expanding my pond, and right now it's about half an acre. I want to add another half acre to it and increase the stock there. Get some channel cats and push out an aquaponics system to where I'm breeding channel cats, because there's nowhere near me that sells channel catfish. There's if you go to the grocery store down the road from me, you're going to get mud cat or bluegill. I mean, blue cat or mud cat. You're not going to get any channel cat, and channel cat's the best meat. And so, I'm going to be doing all that, and, selling vegetables, whatever, fish, vegetables, chickens, goat, and
were you that kind of dude before this? Like, were you homesteading kind of dude before this, or were you hang out in an apartment and kind of chill kind of person?
No, I lived in Houston, but I always wanted property. I was born in Louisiana, and but my parents, the economy in Louisiana is horrible, and especially the part of Louisiana I'm from. And my parents moved us to Dallas when I was really young, but I always came back to Louisiana to visit. And so I always wanted to come back. I always wanted to own property. Every time I would go over the Atchafalaya is this long bridge in between Lafayette and Baton Rouge. It's probably, I think it's like 18 miles long. And every time I'd go over the Atchafalaya, I'd see the people. They got the little boats. It's like a little shack on a boat that's just floating there in the water. And I was like, I want to live like that. I want to live like that. I'm like, I'm a fucking coon ass. I want to live like that. I don't want to be bothered. That's who I want to live, and so it's always been kind of my thing to get away in somehow, some way, shape or form, get away from it all. I lived in Houston for 30 years. My kids still live there. And it was just, as they started getting older, we're able to start driving and come see me. And my parents put their property up for sale, and I was like, I'm on it. I got 8 3/4 acres, a 5-bedroom house, $177,000. So I was like, I'm good.
Wow.
I am in the swamp. It takes a lot of fucking work. It's probably like 5 months out of the year I can't mow my yard. My grass gets like taller than I am, but you know what? Like, whatever. I deal with snakes and rats and all kinds of shit out there, but I'm not dealing with Houston traffic or the people. So
yeah. Do you have to deal with what's like the tax and the locality issues out there? Like, do you have to pay tax to the county, or is there a local municipality that's also kind of involved?
No, just sales tax. It's just sales tax. Yeah. 8.25%, I think 8.25% sales tax, and then property tax.
When you say that, that sounds like it makes agorism even an even better proposition, right? Because that's one less thing that you don't necessarily have to worry about too much. It's pretty much just the sales tax that you're trying to kind of like mitigate, right?
The only thing I'm trying to dodge are the feds, man. That's it.
Yeah.
That's really all I'm trying to dodge. Like where I live, the town that I don't even live in the town. I live near the town. I live in between like a small city and a little bitty town of like 2,000 people. In the town that I live closest to, the city hall, I've never even seen it open. They don't even have they don't even have a police department. I mean, the only reason you call them a town is because they have this little post office there, and there's a credit union, and it's like whatever. And so they raise their money because every year they have like a crawfish boil during crawfish season, and then they'll have a fair in the fall, and they raise money like that. And that's how they pay for things around the town.
Holy shit! I think people need to take notes. Like that's the way government should be funded.
Yeah, exactly.
Not at the point of a gun. Like have a freaking crawfish boil and have people put money in the hat. Like that makes more sense.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
You pay, I guess you pay like $30 a person to get into the crawfish boil. You can buy beer. You buy $6-7 for a plate of crawfish. And that's how they fund shit. And I'm like, fine, it's all voluntary. I don't have to go if I don't want to,
That's incredible. That's almost as far away from where I live right now as could possibly be.
Yeah. And that's why when I got in the argument with these people about the whole Walmart thing, we pay taxes, but we want a Walmart. I'm like, you don't pay taxes to fucking Walmart. Yeah. Like, who the fuck are you? Like, what the hell? Boogie, stop. Sorry, man. My dog.
No, that's all right. You got a road buddy with you?
I do. You want to see him?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, he's a monster, so I got to take off my headset so I won't be able to hear you.
No, that's all right.
All right. Come here. Come on.
Oh my goodness. That's a big boy. That's awesome. He's a big dude.
Yeah, it's a 90-pound baby, man.
Yeah, a 90-pound lap dog, I'm sure.
He is. He's not even a year and a half old yet. So he's just a big old baby.
And so, what? He goes out on the road all the time with you, or what?
Yeah, he's been riding with me since he was 5 weeks old.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
We have one that stays with my wife.
Yeah. I have a little pocket dog that's cool with the car. Mm-hmm. And then I got another dog who will sit there and like shake and drool the entire time, so she can't go on the road.
My wife's dog will not get in the vehicle on his own.
Yeah,
we're gonna be bringing the brothers out to Childeberg. Actually, him and my wife's dog are both from the same litter, and it's gonna be 4 hours of hell with that fucking dog. He's gonna be
you might have to like knock him out or something like that. I don't know. Actually CBD oil. Have you ever tried CBD oil?
I'll give him some melatonin. Melatonin works. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
We might have some CBD at the house. My wife had bought some, I think, we have a Mastiff who has really bad hips. And so she had bought some for him. We might still have some, so we might be able to do that. But I know we have melatonin.
Oh yeah. Either way, I've had good results with the CBD. Just like a little bit in order to kind of like calm them down. So they usually chill out pretty good. But no, that's awesome. Are you like a crypto guy? Do you kind of live in that world?
I dabble.
Yeah.
Don't ask me. I don't know anything about specifics. I know Elon Musk today said he had diamond hands, and I said, well, that's a perfect reason not to sell. These fucking rich fucks are trying to rip you people off.
Yeah. No, everyone was like all pro him, and then I was like, this has been a grift from the start, people. Like, he understands that it's an easily manipulated market, and that's what he's going to do. He's going to play to his strength. Like, this whole dip, he's been buying the whole time. Almost guaranteed.
Exactly.
Almost guaranteed.
And
like, he he doesn't do things for the short term. Like he is like a futurist, right? Like he thinks long term. He saw the rise and he's like, oh shit, I missed the first wave, and he's gonna depress it as much as he can until the next wave hits.
Exactly. And that's why I'm like, nah, I ain't moving. I'm not moving on it. I mean, I might buy some, but I'm not moving. I'm not selling anything, you know.
You Bitcoin, or do you have any other coins that you follow?
I have Ethereum and Bitcoin Cash, and I've been looking into Monero a little bit, but I haven't messed with it at all. But yeah, I got Bitcoin Cash for spending. You know, if I want to spend some, or you know, if I want to do business out, you know, sell eggs for crypto, you know, the fees aren't as high, you know, so it just makes more sense for transaction purposes.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. I forget who's been pushing Bitcoin Cash, but yeah, there's a bunch of people that with the rise of Bitcoin, because the fees are so high, they've been pushing Bitcoin Cash, and then that's also the benefit of Ethereum, right? The Ethereum fees aren't that bad.
I found out about Bitcoin Cash through John Bush, and then I talked to Justin O'Donnell yesterday, and he's big on Bitcoin Cash.
Yeah,
and I have more Bitcoin than I have anything else, because I want that money to rise in value, you know, and that's kind of like a savings for me. But I have I'm investing in Bitcoin Cash and Ethereum for, you know, purchasing, you know, and to use crypto. And I've also started here recently looking into the gold backs and the gold notes, the Utah gold backs, and they have the New Hampshire gold backs and stuff like that. So I'm looking at all these alternative currencies, you know, like one Utah gold back is valued at $3.71. But see, as the price of gold goes up, because it has gold woven into the paper. Yeah. So as the price of gold goes up, the price of the gold back is going to go up.
Yeah, no, I think the vast majority of people that I listen to from like a financial standpoint has completely changed. I mean, my background, I worked in banking for a while, like retail banking. I worked in trading and stuff like that. And my viewpoint of the markets has changed considerably over my lifetime, to the point where, you know, I've had that kind of come to Jesus moment where it's like, no, I see it for what it is, right? And it's the problem is most people don't. They still don't understand they're in the casino, right? There's casinos that you can tell are there because of the blinking lights and all that other shit, and then there's the casino that you're in that just looks like the world that you walk around in every single day, you know. But that's so. You mentioned John Bush. John is someone who. Jose Gallasan kind of mentioned to me, and I hadn't really heard of him before. Are you involved in the Freedom Cell movement or anything like that?
I'm not. I've looked at it a little bit because I'm not ever home. I haven't really involved myself in anything like that where I can have to go to meetings and meet up with people and stuff. It's hard enough to be out here on the road and podcast, and then get home and I work for 2 days and, you know, out in the yard and try to spend time with the wife and everything like that. I just don't have time for stuff like that. The fact that we're going to make it to Childerberg this year is actually a really big deal to us.
Yeah. And that wasn't on my radar either. And I don't know if I can make it this year, but I definitely want to hit it up this next year. So your other half, is she of a similar mindset, or did you have to win her over?
No, I mean, she's South African, so
that's interesting.
Yeah, so her entire idea of politics was she wants nothing to do with anything political. So the fact that we're working so much together to effectively reach our own goals and our own dreams together, that's right up her alley. So agorism works perfectly fine for her. And, you know, and so that's not something that she's ever given me a hard time about. Now, when we first met, she wanted to live in a city. And so I moved her ass out to Houston, and we lived out there for 2 years before she was like, I got to get the fuck out of this place. She was like, I was thinking Cape Town or London, not this shit. I don't know what the fuck's happening here. And so as soon as that property came up, we moved out, and she loves it out where we're at. She loves it. She knows everybody that works at the grocery store. Everybody in the town loves her. She has her little tire place there, or where she gets her oil changed and her tires, taken care of. And everybody there knows her. So she's happier than a pig in shit, because she's a people person, and everybody knows who she is. So she loves that.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, a group of us up here, we've actually been looking at West Virginia. Mm-hmm. I think West Virginia is an area we looked at. New Hampshire. New Hampshire is definitely an interesting. I mean, you mentioned Justin. He's deep in it up there in New Hampshire, right?
Yeah.
Jose checking in, saying thanks for the name drop. Jose's been on fire. He's had a bunch of really good people on recently. He's kind of finding his own here with the individual podcasts he's working on. What kind of slant do you take on Year Zero? I've heard some of your stuff, but it's like, is it just kind of what comes up, or do you have kind of like a direction that you're headed in?
What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to have these conversations with people that have solutions to the problems that everyday people can invoke in their own lives, right? And so when I talk to the Huntsman, who's a supply chain expert, it's so people know, like, all right, the reason that these shortages are happening is because this is going on. And so you need to be prepared and act accordingly, because this stuff is happening. So my podcast is all an act accordingly podcast. It's like, here's the information, here's what we can tell you to do. And, this is the best information we can give you. Act accordingly. Know what's coming up, so you have some sort of idea of what's happening. And I talk to all kinds of different people. I'll be releasing. I'm still working. Because my day's been so crazy. I'm working on this. I'll be releasing the podcast with Dave versus Goliath tonight, and then tomorrow I'm releasing a podcast I recorded with Ford Fisher, and then I'm recording tomorrow. I'm recording with Sheldon Richmond, and I'm dropping it on Friday. And I'm also tomorrow night, I'm recording with Big Boy Berto from Ghost Show, and he'll be on. So we'll be chatting about what they do and his podcast, because it's kind of interesting. It's like they release a techno album once a month, which is pretty interesting. So I'm like, I want to talk to this guy. I know some of my listeners listen to him, and they're like, you got to check this out. And I'm like, I'm more of a metal guy, but I'll talk to the guy, like whatever.
Yeah. There's so one of the people that I interview, I'm on the Hive blockchain. It's like my way of decentralizing my social media, because it's truly decentralized social media, and there's a couple of options that are out there that I've really been kind of like drawn attention to. And one of the people that was kind of like early on there, her name is Crimsonclad online, and she does a show every single, or 2 days a week. She does a show, and that's like it's a weird combo. She does metal, right? Like kind of like not like heavy, maybe like kind of like new metal, right? And then synthwave, like from like the 80s and 90s, like like cheesy music from like Lethal Weapon and stuff like that. She'll have like those kind of like synth wavy kind of like computer generated songs and stuff like that she plays, but all like groups that you've never heard of, like these kind of really gem kind of groups, But no, I think
my wife likes that shit. She listens to this band Sisters of Mercy, and anytime she ever plays that shit, it's stuck in my head for days, and I don't even like it.
That's funny. Some of the stuff she comes up with stuff that I've never heard of in my entire life, and it's good. Like it's some of it's like catchy and stuff like that. Yeah. But I'm with you. I'm like a hard rock guy. Like I'm an old school hard rock guy. I'm a little. Did you ever get into like the Seattle like grunge kind of scene or anything like that?
Yeah, man. Alice in Chains was my favorite band when I was in high school. I'm a little bit older than you. I'm 42. So they were huge when I was in high school, And Nirvana was huge when I was in high school. Pearl Jam, all those bands were huge when I was in high school. So yeah, I definitely was into that shit. And then Pantera, from being from Texas, I mean, you have to listen to Pantera, and then, but I also like a lot of blues, I like a lot of old classic rock, so I listen to anything from the Doors to freaking Lamb of God to Pig Destroyer to, I listen to all kinds of shit. Black Sabbath was, obviously one of the greats,
What do you think those bands would say? I'm like, most of them have been silenced. Some of them are dead. I mean, but what do you think those bands would say about the world that we live in right now? I mean, like, I find it just brain-numbingly stupid that the people that used to be able to say, like, fuck the system and, like, this is messed up, this is why, most of those people who are now, like, I'll use air quotes, like, the popular artists of today are just, they like fall in lockstep. It's just like, the brain waves have just been completely co-opted.
Right. Yeah, I don't know, man. When I saw the dead Kennedys praising Mitt Romney, I was like, the fucking world as we know it is over, man. I don't fucking know, dude. I have no idea. I don't pretend to act like I know what any of these people think anymore. But one of the guys I talk to on my podcast, and we text regularly, is David Sanchez, the vocalist from Havoc. So if you're looking for some metal that has like a really nice like freedom tone to it and theme to it, like go check out Havoc. Give them some respect out there in Colorado. Because there's not a lot of them out there anymore. Yeah. I ride motorcycles and I've ridden with MCs and just, I mean, it's I don't even know how to explain it. It's the same thing as the metal scene. You're like, this was all about rebellion and like, fuck the system and fuck all these people and being free and being your own person. That's what riding a motorcycle. It's all about being free. You're out there without a helmet on running like 85 miles an hour down the interstate. And I mean, there's no feeling like it, but especially when you're in a pack of fucking, 40, 50 bikes. But then these guys start talking and, defending the police and stuff like that after shit like what happened in Waco took place, when the FBI was the one who started firing on the fucking bikers, and then all the bikers went to fucking jail for it. And it was a year later before even the story came out and all the bikers got, released and, set free, luckily. But I mean, you had to listen to it for over a year that, oh my God, all these fucking crazy bikers are, tearing up Texas. And it's like, man, it was nothing like that happened.
Yeah, no, System of a Down used to be all anti, but it was only when there was like, conservative, majorities and presidents and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden they're either quiet or they're complicit, in what's going on. Right. The punk rock scene used to be that middle finger. It used to be, they would say shit, and like nowadays, if they said the same stuff, I guess it's like, the cancel culture censorship kind of thing, and everything has money attached to it. So, right. For them, it's a business decision for them, which is, it's mind numbing from the standpoint of most of those people used to create music and not exactly expect to get paid anything, right? Like they would lose money on it, like the bar tab at the end of the night was more than they got paid for the gig, Right.
A lot of those guys were homeless at some point in time. I was talking to some dude a while back, and he brought up, I said something because I grew up listening to a lot of sludge metal. And if you don't know what sludge metal is, that's like metal like that comes out of New Orleans and Mississippi and the South. It's very Southern. Bands like Crowbar and I Hate God and bands like that came out of that scene. Goat Horror, comes out of that scene. But I was talking to this one guy and he was like, I said something about I Hate God. And he's like, yeah, but Mike Williams went totally fucking woke. I was like, what? Why? Like he had a song called white N-word. And I'm not going to say it on your show because it's your show, but
Yeah.
but I'm like, what?
Yeah.
No.
That is, I don't even know what it is. I don't know if it's societal pressure. I don't know if it's like this concerted effort to censure or censor all of that. But it's like all of the people you would have expected to be the anti-establishment people have just caved. And it's almost like, I don't know, maybe they just saw like a handful of people essentially get dragged out and shot, and metaphorically, but and they were just like, oh well, I guess that's the way it's gonna be, so I guess I just gotta kind of like figure out a way to keep on doing what I'm doing regardless of what I have to say. It's really unnerving. I can't even. My wife made this observation with the masks and COVID and everything like that. The number of teenagers and like young college age kids that not only are compliant, but like they're the fucking Gestapo. They're the enforcement arm too, right? Like if mom and dad aren't wearing it, they're like, Mom, Dad, you gotta wear the mask. Like you gotta be and so regardless of whether you want to wear a mask or not, that's really scary, because it used to be that those generations were also the ones that were defiant, and now it's almost like there are these complacent, livestock, basically.
Yeah, well, I think part of it, at least with people my age and the bands I grew up listening to, so the guys a little bit older than me, I think what happened was, and this could be a stretch, but I think this is what's going on here. We grew up, especially like sludge metal and those in the southern punk rock, like Arson Anthem and like bands like that down in the South. We grew up with Christianity shoved down our fucking throats, just shoved down our throats. So all our rebellion was centered around rebelling against the social conservatives. And because the social conservatives are against what's the woke culture, I think they're almost so uninformed about what's actually happening that they're like the anti-Puritans of one, but they don't see the puritanical mindset of the wokeness and of the critical race theory. And that's interesting. If it's ever brought to their attention, the puritanical and the evangelical, fervor and theological kind of fervor of this social, stigma, this cultural, movement, then I'm sure they'll take a step back and think about it. But I really think what it is for so long we were dealing with, especially in the Bible Belt, we were dealing with that hard Bible thumping in your face social conservative mindset. And we were all, fuck you. We got 666 written across our fucking foreheads just to piss off grandma. You know what I'm saying? And so it's really, I think it's the lack of belief in your own kind of cultural idea and always being against that social conservatism. It's almost like they believe the anti-Puritans of one, and when they see the puritanical vision of what's going on, that they'll step back and think about it. Now, to counter that point, Phil Anselmo a few years ago got really drunk and said some really stupid shit at a concert. Yeah. And people took him seriously. And he got mobbed. And this was before it was a big deal, right? And this was, I want to say it was like 2014 or 15. And Mike Williams and Phil Anselmo are like best friends. So you would almost think that Phil Anselmo would have that in to say, no, it's not what you think. But at the same time, I don't know. But all I can figure is it's just that I'm against that puritanical social conservatism.
Yeah, I'm there with you. It that definitely makes sense as an explanation. It's almost like it's the current holy war, right? Like that's what it is. Except the people on one side don't understand that they're part of a religion, right? Like the social conservatives will still unabashedly say that they're trying to, promote, pure, religious or Christian conservative values, whereas the other side will basically, they think they're just anti that, when
Right.
truthfully they don't understand that they themselves are part of this kind of like religious construct. Do you listen to Mike Passio at all?
No, I've never heard of
Okay,
it.
so Mike's actually interesting. He gave he's got like a huge range of theories and things like that in terms of stuff he studied, but a lot of what he looks at is spirituality attached to anarchism. And so he himself will say that he's spiritual, but he wouldn't necessarily consider himself, like a Christian, at least in the modern sense of it. And the way he lays it out is essentially he's like, there's natural rights, and then that's it. Right.
Mhm.
So, like, regardless of what people say, whatever altar that they worship at, he was like, if your worship conflicts with natural rights, he's like, I'm not on board with you. He's like, I'm just, I don't see it. Right. And so he gets to a very similar place to probably you and I from taking that tact where it's like, most religious conservatives will, back the police and essentially give them almost a blank check to do what they're doing.
Right.
He'll come out in opposition to that, and
Right.
he'll basically say like, this law and order idea of Judeo-Christianity is in direct conflict, or in many cases is in direct conflict with the natural rights of sovereign individuals and free individuals. So he comes at it from a really interesting place, but that is something that also plays out pretty frequently here, where people are always like, well, what's a right? Like, what's I'd imagine who Shane Hazel is, right?
Yeah, I know who he is. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he is an adamant anti-federalist because he doesn't think the Constitution is essentially what everyone else construes it as or misconstrues it as.
Right.
What brought you to anarchism? Was it something where it was like you were defiant and it kind of refined a little bit, or how did you end up in that area?
Well, I wasn't political for a long time, and but when I got out of the military, I started listening. The Iraq War was just starting,
Yeah.
and so I was kind of watching the news, and I was listening to what MSNBC and CNN were saying, and then in my truck, I would listen to like Glenn Beck and Sean Hannity to see what they had to say about what was going on, and I just kind of fell into this, kind of conservative kind of talk radio routine of listening mainly to Glenn Beck. I listened to him a lot, and I actually liked him a lot. I still listen to him sometimes. I still like him. I think he's wrong on a lot of shit, but I really like the fact that he gave Eric July a job. I think that's badass,
Yeah.
So I was gonna vote for Ted Cruz whenever he was running against Donald Trump, and I ran into Austin Peterson on Twitter, and he's like, I see you support Ted Cruz, and I was like, yeah. He's like, can I call you? I'm running for president on the Libertarian Party ticket. So okay. So he called me, and we spent like 2 hours on the phone just bullshitting.
Yeah.
And talking books and different ideas and this, that, and the other. And he happened to be reading the same book I was reading at the time, which was The Art of Power by John Meacham. It's a biography on Thomas Jefferson. So we were both reading that at the same time. And so we started chatting, and he told me about a podcast. I think he told me about Tom Woods, honestly, but I can't remember which one. But anyway, I ran across the Mises Institute and the Tom Woods podcast, and I was watching a video of Judge Napolitano, who I was always a fan of because he was always on Fox, so I would watch him every once in a while. And I was always a big fan of his, and he was talking, and somebody in the crowd said, "You sound like you're an anarchist." And he said, "You don't hear me denying it, do you?"
Yeah.
And I was like,
"You're like what?"
Yeah. So I was like, "How can a judge be an anarchist? Like, I don't understand this. He's not throwing Molotov cocktails at people. Like, I don't understand what's going on here." So I started going down a rabbit hole, and ta-da.
Yeah. It is an interesting, call it whatever you will, pipeline or progression or something like that.
Yeah.
There is like this momentum that gets behind you that once you ask the first question, it's just, it leads to other questions.
Right.
I find it funny that you said that it's Austin Peterson, because he's obviously someone who is a polarizing figure
Right.
within, the liberty or the anarchy and libertarian, realm. But no, I think that just goes to show that there isn't one way to getting to any point, right? Like there's this
Right.
multitude of ways to get there. What are your thoughts? I want to get you back on the road here. I don't want to take too much of your time, but what are your thoughts on Dave Smith and whether it makes sense for him to kind of like push to try and run for president, and what do you think that looks like?
Well, I don't see any reason to combat Dave Smith running for president.
Mhm.
I think at worst, nothing happens. I mean, I think that's worst case scenario is we are where we are, and so I think it's probably more dangerous for him than it is for anybody else.
If he ends up being popular, that's for damn sure.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. I mean, best case scenario, it's dangerous for Dave Smith,
Yeah.
And so I don't, like you were just saying, there's not one single road to anarchism, to agorism. I think anybody, I just put this on Twitter a while ago, anybody, I don't care what platform they're using, whether I like the platform, I dislike the platform, I don't give a shit. Anybody who's trying to normalize and defend agorism and liberty and just ultimate freedom, personal autonomy, I'm cool with them. I don't care. So will I go out of my way to vote for Dave Smith? No, probably not. I mean, I don't know. Libertarian Party of Texas was only worse than the Libertarian Party of Nevada in their, in the way that they're messaged. So now that the Mises Caucus is running Nevada, I imagine that messaging is going to at least get better. And so now I'm stuck with the worst messaging group of libertarians in the country. They're no better than the GOP of Texas. I was talking to Tho Bishop about this earlier. They're no better than the GOP of Texas. The Libertarian Party of Texas is horrible, and I really don't want anything to do with them. I have been part of the Libertarian Party 3 times before, and I don't foresee myself doing that again because I really didn't feel like I got anything out of it. I thought it was a waste of money, and but I'm not going to discount the fact that Dave can do some good things, with the platform, maybe reach some people. The way he speaks, the way he communicates, I think is going to be really good for the Libertarian Party, attracting that type of person.
Yeah.
And I know, like, I've heard people say that they think that what it's going to do attract a lot of people, and then it will just fall back into what it was. But that's the same argument we get against anarchy, right? Well, if we get rid of the government, another government's going to pop up.
Yeah, right.
I mean, so if the worst case scenario is you end up in the exact same place you are, like, whatever, man. Like, that's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, first of all, he is influential enough, I think, that he would gain traction. I think he would definitely be more of a lightning rod, than past candidates have been, and I think that's actually a positive. And I can understand where some of the people within the party are coming from. And I can also understand the more purely agorist perspective where it's like, look, let's not build this machine that will just become the new machine of our oppression. Right. But that being said, like, what I'm inspired by is the fact that, like, if someone like Shane Hazel and I believe Dave Smith, I've looked him in the eyes and shook his hand before. I believe those two people, when they're saying, like, if you put me in that seat, I will, like, dismantle and then turn the lights off and lock the door on the way out, right? Like, if that's your message and your actions say that you will do that, I'm on board. If the idea is that the Libertarian Party is to become this, like, force for the rest of the existence of this country, I don't know if I'm behind that, because I'm again like, all right, so we go from 2 parties to 3 parties, and who ends up getting paid off or co-opted, in that process.
Yeah.
Basically, the Republicans are essentially in most states exactly that, right? Like they are
But
essentially controlled opposition.
yeah, ultimately, you're still decentralizing everything, though. I mean,
Yeah,
ultimately, I mean, that's what it boils down to. You're still decentralizing. You're taking it out of a duopoly, and you get 3, and then you get 4, and then you get 5. I mean, you look at how, it would run. How would it work? I don't know. I mean, if you got enough, I mean, let's just say, for instance, which I don't think there's any chance making a big impact on a national stage. I just don't think that's what's going to happen. I think best case scenario, it carves paths for local races. I really think that's what you're looking at with somebody like Dave Smith, who will be out there messaging and, like you said, being, taking the fire, and then he's out there endorsing, local candidates, for dog catcher or whatever, in small town America, all over the country. You never know how much you can change people's lives and the existence of people on local levels until you give it a shot. So I'm not against it. And like I said, he's not going to be demonizing agorists. He's not going to be like, well, those goddamn people that don't want to pay taxes, no, he's going to be defending us. He's going to be trying to normalize the idea of not paying taxes, of working for yourself without asking government permission. That's good. That's not a bad thing as far as I'm concerned. Like I said, worst case scenario, I think nothing happens.
Yeah. Look, if we could get 10,000 people to be council members and band together and tell the states and the federal government to fuck off, which, by the way, we had a book club. We do a book club every single month. I don't know if you've read it. Nullification by Tom Woods is actually fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. And actually, it's kind of like you were talking about. It's a roadmap of actually being able to do something that has an impact.
Yeah, my buddy. I don't know if you know Mike Meharry. He's a good friend of mine, Mike Meharry. He works for Shift Gold, and he also writes for the 10th Amendment Center. And he wrote a book, and that's how I met him. He wrote a book called Our Last Hope, and it really breaks down the ideas of nullification and decentralization. Yeah. And it does it in a way where you could hand it to your average conservative, and they would read it, and they would get it. They would really grasp the concept.
Yeah, I definitely got to check that out. That's awesome. Yeah. Look, I want to say thank you. I know you got some stuff that you got to go drive a little bit and offload and make
it's
some
getting
money,
hot.
so.
It's getting hot in this fucking truck without the AC on. I ain't gonna lie to you.
I feel it for you. I'm not going to torture you any longer. Look, Tommy, you're welcome back anytime. I think you're good people, and I appreciate your perspective on things. Look, anyone who's watching, definitely hit up Year Zero. Listen, you guys, you're on all the different podcast platforms.
Yeah, I am. You should be able to find me.
Yeah, definitely check out Year Zero. Listen to Tommy. He's got some really good stuff that's out there. And again, it's practical. You can actually employ it and kind of implement it and actually make a change, as opposed to just freaking rage tweeting and all this other bullshit that people do.
Yeah,
and you can have an impact.
You can rage tweet at me all you want. Tell me how fucking stupid I am.
Yeah. That's much appreciated. Look, thank you. Have a very good evening. I will see everyone tomorrow night at 7 p.m. See you later.
All right, brother.
Thanks.